Alright, we are here with another league of modern ad nauseam. I'm continuing with my Wishclaw Sheldock list. This list has been serving me pretty well, doing pretty decent amount of winning. The Phyrexian Unlife bug is fixed, so I'm back with some Adnaus. I don't think Adnaus is in the greatest place at the moment, unfortunately. A lot of our free matchups are not that common. In particular, burn, prowess style decks are just not really all that big right now. There's a lot more discard running around. The blue-red decks are more so the Murktide tempo decks that have counter spells. And a tempo deck is a whole lot scarier for us than an aggro deck. Adnaus preys on aggro decks. So, with regards to the list, a lot of the main deck is pretty standard. Maybe the one not as standard thing is the Singleton Inverter of Truth, which I think is very, very good. It gives us an out if we have a Profane Tutor coming off Suspend. We can go get an Inverter if we have a Thassa's or a Jace or something like that, but not really much else in the way of combo pieces. It opens a lot of doors the same way the Singleton Ad Nauseam opens a lot of doors. It lets us win in situations where we wouldn't be able to win otherwise, and I think it is definitely deserving of the slot on the back of that. The sideboard needs to be potentially changed around a little bit. The Sphinx is probably bad. Question is if there's enough shadow to run Godhead again. We'll have to see. So I'm going to be keeping an eye on this sideboard going forward. But with that in mind, let's get into... Oh wait, one other thing. If you're usually here for the Doomsday content and you haven't, and you've watched this far into it, Doomsday will be next as far as videos go. I'm thinking of kind of switching back and forth here and there. So stay tuned. Alright, now we're going into round number 1. Alright, we're here with round number 1 against Silent Song or something like that. With the previous Doomsday video I made, tried recording the league on video and then doing the commentary on video. I plan to do the same thing here, however this recording had a problem, so going forward if I am recording any sort of league I'll try to do it that way. In any case, this opening hand is pretty good. We have 2 Wishclaw Talismans, a Pentad Prism, and a Spoils, meaning we can just play out our 2-drops. We're looking at having 5 or 6 mana on turn 4. If we draw any combo piece, playing Pentad and Wishclaw on turns 2 and 3 then gives us the combo on turn 4. Even if we don't draw any combo piece, all that happens is we're delayed until turn 5, essentially, with this extra Wishclaw. Or if they interact with us, take a combo piece, counter a combo piece, then we're glad we have this extra one. So let's take a look here. We'll lead on Seachrome Coast. No real reason to lead on Gemstone Mine here. No real reason to bluff like Veil or anything like that game 1. Our opponent leads on Botanical Sanctum. We draw Grace, so now we are all set up for a nice clean turn 4 win. We play the Pentad Prism since we have 2 Wishclaws, so Wishclaw is actually kind of the redundant thing here. Yes, if we didn't find, or let's say we played the Wishclaw and then they like discard our Pentad Prism or something, then we might only have 3 lands, and then this Wishclaw isn't fully a combo piece because it's harder to get that extra mana. So I'd rather play out the Wishclaw, and if they take anything, then play out the Pentad, and if they take anything, then we have the Wishclaw. Now, Botanical Sanctum is not likely to play a discard spell. In fact, they're more likely to have some sort of artifact or enchantment removal. But in the case of, let's say they have like Brazen Bar or something, if they do that, they're delaying themselves a turn. If I play out the Wishclaw next turn, that's maybe more likely to eat any sort of removal. And then we can just play the extra Wish Claw the turn after. So we see a cycle of Windcaller Aven, so they're playing Living End. Our opponent plays their second land, we draw an Unlife, play our third land, and now I'm interested, I believe, in playing a Wish Claw here. Yes, because this Unlife, while we could play Unlife here, it doesn't actually matter. In fact, it slows down our ability to combo. If we play the Wish Claw, we can get Oracle and then win with Spoils Grace Oracle next turn. Now we may still choose not to go for Spoils Grace Oracle if we have reason to suspect Force of Negation or something like that. So let's see what they do. So our opponent cycles Steam Vents. They do some more cycling. Cycle Street Wraith, cycle Street Wraith. Then on their main, they cascade a Shardless Agent. Bring back a ton of power. Go to our turn. We get Oracle. We ask them if they have Force of Negation, and they do. So we lose game number 1. If we had a little bit more time, we could have played around Force of Negation by getting this second Wish Claw into play and then attempting to Wish Claw for a Pact. And if we had, say, 2 Angel's Grace instead of Grace Phyrexian Unlife, I would have gone for that line, because that way I could fog their attack with a Grace. I mean, they have 4, 11, 14, 17, 23. They have 25 power in play. So I could fog their attack with a Grace while playing Unlife and not depleting a Pentad counter. And then if we top deck a land, we can win through Force of Negation. But because we had this Unlife, if I play the Unlife, then they just force the Unlife in all likelihood. And then we have to burn our Grace, and then we're not really winning in any sort of reasonable time frame. And even if they let the Unlife resolve, maybe, then I'm kind of in the exact same situation the next turn. They hit me negative, and now I need to take a draw step at a Pact. So I think I'd rather give them fewer draw steps, fewer chances to cycle, because remember, a draw step for Living End is not necessarily just one draw. It could be multiple draws. So especially given that it doesn't, the odds of Unlife letting me play around more things, or Claw Grace letting me play around more things, is, I believe, sufficiently low. So we'll take the risk. Alright. To clarify, basically it would hurt more than help trying to play around Force there. Our percentage would go down. Okay. So on to game number 2. So game number 2, we are down 1-0. Our hand is pretty good. We have some fast mana. We have an Unlife and a Talisman. Since we have a lot of mana, this is looking like a potential ad nauseam hand, and we also have this Thoughtseize to interact and perhaps do something relevant. So we spend Bloom. We'll lead on Thoughtseize. Our turn 2 and turn 3 are accounted for, so we need to just get this Thoughtseize out of the way on turn 1. They have actually a pretty annoying hand. They have double Force of Negation, double Violent Outburst, so I can't take their ability to put creatures into play, and I can't take their Force of Negations, and they have this Foundation Breaker. So this is kind of scary. So I take the Foundation Breaker, hoping that maybe they brick on lands for a little bit, and then we can, and hoping that maybe they A, brick on lands a little bit, don't get to Violent Outburst it back, and B, don't have like another blue card, so even though they have 2 forces, they effectively only have 1 force, since they only have 3 blue cards in total. This is a little bit risky, but I think to beat that hand, we're going to need to get a bit lucky, so we are willing to take that risk. So we draw Spoils. That's quite a good draw. We play out Pentad Prism. Our opponent cycles the Riverwinder, so we know they have Force of Negation. They found a land. Go to our turn. We draw a Cascader, and we play Phyrexian Unlife. We're going to hope that they haven't found their third land. they haven't found their third land, but they have found another Foundation Breaker, so they blow up our Unlife, which is kind of annoying. Otherwise, we would have won on our turn. Bloom comes into play. We play a Wishclaw, and they force it, which kind of seems a little bit suspect on their part. Now, I mean, maybe they don't know that, but the thing is, we only have 2 other cards in hand, so maybe we have the combo, but if we have the combo, then they just force spoils. So, that, I think, is a misplay on their part. If they top deck a land, then they can just blow up like Wishclaw and Bloom or something with these 2 Foundation Breakers. So why not hold the force for something that you need to counter? A bit odd. We suspend the Bloom and we cry about the shape we're in. Also notably, they pitch Subtlety, so they still could have another Force of Negation if they found another blue card. They have top decked a 3rd Foundation Breaker, blowing up our Lotus Bloom. So now, actually, they've top decked so many Foundation Breakers that it doesn't matter if they bring them back with Living End. We're just not gonna be able to get through anyway. They draw their 3rd land, but it's a tap, or we're not gonna have any artifacts or enchantments survive anyway. They draw their 3rd land, but it's a tap land. We draw an Ad Nauseam, so we know that their hand consists of 2 Violent Outburst and a Force of Negation and 1 Unknown. So if it's a blue card, then we get punished for attempting to Ad Nauseam here. However, I would like to maybe get them to tap out for one of these Violent Outbursts on their turn, and then we could Ad Nauseam on their turn, or maybe they somehow tap off a Force of Negation mana on their turn. So we're going to hold this Ad Nauseam and not give them the opportunity to Force of Negation it, since A, it's pretty likely that they did find a blue card, and B, we kind of need this Ad Nauseam to resolve if we want to be winning. We're looking to value Naus. So they play a tap land. Bloom comes into play. They didn't tap off. Our upkeep, they're looking to Violent Outburst. So now I'm kind of put in a bind. My artifacts are going to get blown up, so I have to value Naus here. We are in the same shape we're in last turn, where if they have a blue card, they get us, and if they don't, they don't. The one additional benefit here is if they do counter it, I can potentially no, it doesn't quite work on one land short. I was gonna say if we top deck Grace, then we have protected Grace Spoils Oracle, but we don't. So we'll risk it. I maybe should have used the Pentad mana just because the Pentad's going away after this anyway. Oh no, I think maybe I was hoping to draw a Pact and then pact the Living End to ensure that I have enough mana. So we draw a bunch of cards, a bunch of lands. We get a Grace, we get another Grace, we get a Spoils, get an Oracle. So here we have to stop at 2. I was really looking for a Pact. However, this is not the worst. They can Living End, kill our Prism. We play a Pentad going down to 1. We're going to Grace off this Pentad and then still have Pentad, Grace, Spoils, Oracle. Part of the reason why I went so deep is because I would have liked to make sure that I had as much interaction as possible. So here I'm looking to basically, I'm assuming if this Pentad dies, then I'll have 5 mana next turn. So I would have Grace, Thoughtseize, Spoils, Oracle. However, if I hit like an extra Pact or something like that, then that would have been better. At 3 life, the risk is not super high, especially given that Unlife's already out of the way. Ad Nauseam is what is being cast, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4. There's like 6 hits that kill us. No, 5 because Inverter's already taken. So it's kind of low. Or no, did I go 4-2? I might have gone 4-2. Yeah, that's what happened. I went 4-2. So on 4, it's not that risky. On 3, it's a little more risky because we have the 3 extra Unlifes. But this Oracle is the last card. Okay, so in any case, we discard down, making sure to keep Double Grace, Oracle, an extra land, and the 2 spoils, because this does also open lines like, so assuming they don't blow up the Pentad, we have Gemstone, Grace, spoils for Pact, Thoughtseize, spoils, Oracle, so we have 2 interaction pieces up. Cycle Cerdon, attack, Grace. It's a kind of good attack by them, although it's not like Ad Nauseam has any way to punish them for attacking with more things, but you want to attack with at least 2 things in case I had like Slaughter Pact and just Slaughter Pacted 1. Bloom ticks down, doesn't really matter. Grace, we Thoughtseize. We see that the way is clear. What did they have? They had Violent Outburst, Living End, Mystical Dispute. Yeah, they had Mystical Dispute. So I can play spoils. They Mystical Dispute it, which is fine. And then we spoils for a what's it called? Oh yeah. And then since they had no other interaction, we're tapped out, then we just spoils to empty and then play the Oracle. And we got game number 2. Alright, game number 3 against Living End. Our opening hand is pretty solid. We have a bunch of mana, we have a Pact, we have an Unlife, and we have a Spoils. So we're just looking to make our land drops, play Unlife, and then ideally on turn 4 win with Pact backup. Unlife is pretty good here because if they resolve a huge early Living End or something like that, it could buy us some time that we need in order to get to the combo. Profane Tutor is perfect because this means we do have combo on turn 4. We also pick up an Angel's Grace, so even if this Unlife gets destroyed, then we are still able to win on turn 4. So this is all going great. It also lets us use Pact of Negation as Force of Will if needed, and still win with Unlife, Spoils, and then whatever we get off Profane, which would be a Thassa's Oracle. So they play their 3rd land. We draw another Pact, so this just keeps getting better and better. We play an Unlife, they Brazen Borrower to bounce it. They pass their turn, and now on our turn, they are hard casting Force of Negation on Profane Tutor, so we'll Pact that. The fact that they hard casted Force of Negation would suggest to me that they might have another Force of Negation, or perhaps they have a Subtlety. Subtlety's effectively good against us since they can stop Thassa's Oracle. It's one reason we should lead on Oracle before playing our Grace and Spoils if needed, because then we can see if Oracle resolves first if we suspect Subtlety. So Bloom resolves, we draw a Thoughtseize because, you know, we're having, although actually we can't play the Thoughtseize because I played this on black in order to play the Profane Tutor. So maybe there was an argument there that Gemstone should have been played on turn 2 to play the Profane, so we could have left open the option of playing the Clearwater on blue. Knowing that we're going to be spending the 2nd Profane counter, or the 2nd Gemstone counter on Unlife, but then figuring that we have the 3rd Gemstone counter to use on the combo turn. That is... yeah, that might be right, because figure we need 2 blue anyway, so we know if our Clearwaters are making blue, then we can make our black mana off our artifact mana, and if we need... so basically if we split the Clearwaters, then we have to, or if we split the pathways, then we have to make blue mana off our artifact mana, and that means that this extra blue mana is not as useful as extra black mana might potentially be. So odd situation where we probably should have actually played the Gemstone on 2 and started using it before playing a non-Gemstone land. Alright, in any case, we Grace, we Spoils. I probably should have played Oracle first here, because maybe they won't Subtlety the Oracle, or if they do but the thing is, if they Subtlety the Oracle, I'm pacting it and going for it here. So it doesn't really change a whole lot. We play Oracle, and they concede, so they didn't even have the extra interaction spell that we had packed for. So we win. We are up a game, or we're up a match against or over Living End. So on to match number 2. Alright, match number 2. We are 1-0 in this league so far. We have a hand that has a lot of interaction, some white cards, and we're just looking for ideally some sort of black card. Might let us get Ad Nauseam. This is looking like potentially an Ad Nauseam hand. Our opponent revealed a Lurrus at the start of the game, so I kind of like some pacts against Lurrus decks. This could be a combo deck like Lotus Breach. This could be Mill. This could most likely be some sort of Grixis Lurrus pile. And from what I've seen, the Grixis Lurrus piles are playing more counterspells recently. Multiple copies of Drown in the Loch counterspell versus just being purely discard focused. So if they're going to have counter magic, then I kind of feel like I might need the pacts. So they lead on turn 1 Ragavan. They have a Bauble. Turn 1 Ragavan, the nice thing is if you don't play cantrips in your Ad Nauseam list, then Ragavan doesn't have the potential of ever hitting any useful cards. The Exile Clause becomes irrelevant, and the only thing that matters is the fact that it's making a Lotus Petal every turn, which can be relevant, but also is sometimes irrelevant. So if by deck construction you can make Ragavan look like Savannah Lions, that's a pretty nice place to be. So they have Ragavan, they have Croxa. I'll discard one of these. Well, will I discard the Pact? Yeah, discard a Pact. The Croxa is suggesting maybe a more discard focused build, and I actually haven't seen blue yet, so I don't know if they're Grixis, even though I saw the Delta, so they could just be red-black. So we'll play a Pentad here. We draw a Shelldock. Shelldock's pretty good here because it gives us a chance at hitting Oracle, and then we're just 1 combo piece away. Right now we're still 2 combo pieces away. Maybe one of the best draws other than outright drawing a combo piece. We draw another land, which is starting to get not great. We Shelldock and we miss, which, again, it gave us looks that we wouldn't have gotten otherwise, but now we still need to find... We're looking at probably needing Ad Nauseam here. I do burn the Pentad counter to resolve this Unlife, given that they have shown me blue, so they could have some sort of counter spell. And while they're tapped low, they just have this treasure up. I'd like to get this down. I have a Bloom on Suspend coming off, so I will have a whole bunch of mana. So even if I draw Ad Naus next turn, I'll have 8 mana and with Pact backup. So both spoils for Ad Naus and just pure Ad Naus lines are available. This Seachrome can come into play untapped if I burn my last gemstone counter first. So Unlife resolves. They Thoughtseize us and take Pact, which is not great. They exile a Profane Tutor, which can't be played. They play a Lurrus, play a Bauble. Sure. Our Bloom comes in, we draw yet another land. We Grace to stay at 1. They hit a Wishclaw Talisman, which they can't really use so easily, because then they give us the Wishclaw Talisman. They get another Croxa. We have to discard the land and go to negative, which is bad. We draw Oracle. Really, we needed spoils or Ad Naus. And they even have Bolt on Oracle, so I can't chump and hope to live. So we lose game number 1. We just never saw a black card, despite having 14 of them in our deck. Sometimes that's how it goes. Alright, so on to game number 2. Alright, game number 2 against Grixis Lurrus. Our opening hand is pretty good. We have tap land on turn 1, suspend Profane on turn 2, play a Wishclaw on turn 3. We have very high combo piece density. We have 5 combo pieces, so even if we get discarded twice, we stand a decent chance at still comboing on turn 4 if we just pick up some lands, so I'm pretty okay with this hand. Shelldock kind of misses. I put the Bloom under Shelldock because Bloom under Shelldock actually does ramp you a little bit. You can play it for essentially 2 mana, tapping the Shelldock and then 1 to activate the ability, and then Bloom makes 3 mana. It also filters for color, so it does actually have some utility under Shelldock compared to Adnals. I don't want under Shelldock in case I need to tutor for it, and then Wishclaws if I'm already small in my library. The chances of Wishclaw being useful are pretty low. Also, I would like to not draw Blooms now, given that we are past the opening hand phase of the game. So this gets a Bloom out of the deck. If you have a bad Shelldock hit, something to think about is what card don't you want in your deck. It's just a very minor point, but it's sometimes you take a card that you don't want to draw if all of the options are bad. Take cards that you might be able to use rather than doing that if you can at all do so, but in situations where you just have absolutely nothing, then put the Bloom underneath. Now the thing is, even if we missed on Shelldock here, it's really not bad because we essentially got to have an 8-card opening hand this game, where our Shelldock was a cantrip in addition to our land drop. And it was a cantrip that missed, but sometimes your Serum Visions or Sleight of Hand or whatever is just going to give you junk. So cantrips can miss, and Shelldock is a cantrip that sometimes misses, but it's also your land drop. So you got that cantrip in your deck for free. That's one of the reasons why I'm pretty high on Shelldock in general. I do think it works better alongside Wishclaw, where we're playing a lot of 2-drops, because then Shelldock is an easy choice to play on either turn 1 or on turn 3 alongside a 2-drop. So all of the pieces here fit together nicely. If you're playing more cantrips, then Shelldock becomes a little less good because you maybe don't have those. Your turns aren't coming in chunks of 2 as often. Now, I still think a couple might be decent, but we'll see. I probably will record a cantrip league the next time I record a Naus league, just because it's been so long since I've done so. I just kind of want to see how it's playing. I think from what I've watched of other people playing it, it is not as good as running the Wishclaws. I could see some sort of hybrid list if you're not fully willing to commit to Shelldocks and a couple Jaces, but you want to run 2, 3, 4 Wishclaws, just to have greater tutor redundancy. I think that is probably pretty good. Wishclaw, I think, is quite strong, especially if you're running Lotus Bloom, since Lotus Bloom also usually gives you overkill mana on turn 4. Wishclaw gives you, like, the Wishclaw mana is often pretty easy to find. So our opponent leads on Blood Crypt, Dragon Rage, sure. We draw a Bloom, we suspend that, we also suspend Profane, so this is fine. They Thoughtseize us and take a Spoils, which, again, our opening hand was resilient to a couple pieces of discard. They Thoughtseize us again, and they take Wishclaw. So I mean, we sell the Profane suspended, so we're still looking okay here. We draw a Shelldock. Not the most useful, but it does give us the option to win next turn if we top deck a land rather than having to wait until the turn after that. Specifically, we need a white source. Our opponent has Death Shadow, hit us for 1. So we play Profane, and they drown in the Locket. So they had 2 discard spells and a counter spell. We play the Oracle here because I'm thinking because we have this bloom coming off, we have this extra land. We would like to find Ad Nauseam. And if we find spoils, then we'll have a spoils for an Ad Naus line potentially. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Not immediately, but maybe the turn after. No, not the turn after. Maybe I shouldn't have played that. I should have held it for. Should have held it for the greater chance of drawing spoils. So the spoils for Ad Naus line is still 2 turns away. So spoils is actually not live anymore. So I shouldn't have played that. That was a small mistake. Our opponent has Expressive Iteration. Then they have Inquisition for our Angel's Grace. So they've had 4 pieces of interaction. So we're just not beating this. We untap, we draw for turn. It's a Grace, but yes, I can Grace with Bloom, but I'm on 0 outs even if I do that. There's no combination of runners I could draw, because then the next turn, what can I draw to survive off 3 blue lands and a Grim Climb? I can't draw Unlife. We're just on 0 outs. So they had a bunch of interaction. I did have ley lines, and I did bring them in this matchup. I don't particularly like leyline, and at the moment the main reason to play leyline kind of earlier in the summer was the red-black decks, but the red-black decks have definitely fallen off a bit. So also the white-black decks, the red-black and white-black decks, but those decks are not as common anymore, and we see Grixis where there's counter spells in addition to the discard, and this is the same reason that leyline is classically terrible against Grixis Death Shadow. If you can't mull for the leyline, otherwise you will lose the game just on card quantity. Not to say it's impossible to win the game, but mulling to leyline is a losing strategy against Grixis Death Shadow. Because let's say you mull even once to find leyline, you play the leyline, suddenly you're on 5 cards and you can't actually assemble your combo because you only have a couple lands, and then their 1 stub gets you or whatever. So a much better strategy against Shadow is to play single card bombs. Godhead of Awe is a great card there. If Shadow is big enough, then it might be worth playing Godhead of Awe again. I don't really think it is. I think this is just some bad luck. If they had drawn a little bit less of their discard and a little bit more random creature, then we are probably going to be able to get this game too. Alright, so we're 1-1. Let's see if we can claw back to the 4-1 in the next match. Alright, so we're back with round number 3. We are 1-1 so far in this league. Our opening hand here is quite good. We're looking to suspend a bloom on 1, suspend profane on 2, unlife on 3, win on turn 4. We have everything we need right now. So all we're looking for at this point is a little more redundancy in case our opponent interacts with us in some way. Oracle is a bit of redundancy, but it's not a particularly great bit of redundancy. We can't really afford to play this Oracle on 2 as a Ragavan blocker because we need to suspend this Profane on 2. And we can't really afford to play it on 3 because we need to play this Unlife on 3. So our opponent is apparently playing Jund. They have a Seasoned Pyromancer, they have Grist. Well, I guess like Grist, like Jund company. We draw Wishclaw. That is some redundancy, although it is a little bit slow. Our opponent cracks us for a whole bunch. And they have Collected Company, where they get Seasoned Pyromancer and Grist. Our turn. We play an Unlife, and then we go to our opponent's turn. They attack us for a whole bunch, down to 2. They Coco into more mostly irrelevant cards. Then they have Fulminator Mage to blow up one of our lands. if they had blown up Gemstone Mine, we actually might have been in rough shape, because then we get spoils, and then we need 2 mana we need 2 blue mana, a black mana, and a white mana. But plains obviously, or no, we don't need the white mana. We need 2 blue mana and a black mana. However, because we have 2 extra lands and the bloom, we have 5 mana anyway for this Wishclaw. So we could get, so let's say we get spoils with Profane. We can we can make black with the bloom. If we didn't have this Wishclaw, then we wouldn't be able to play the Oracle because we would only have 1 blue mana. However, since we have the Wishclaw, we could play the Wishclaw with the 2 remaining black, use the plains here, go get another Gemstone Mine with the Wishclaw, play the Gemstone Mine as our land for the turn, if we didn't draw a land for the turn, and then play the Oracle. So obviously we have to do the Wishclaw fetching before we resolve spoils that we get with this Profane. So this Wishclaw actually was redundancy here, against potentially getting color screwed out of being able to combo on turn 4. But they blew up the wrong land anyway, and we kill them. Spoils, Oracle. And yeah, this does let us hold up this plains in case they had some sort of removal for Unlife off of 1 land main deck. I don't really even know what they could have, but just on the off chance that they did. Okay, and so we're on to game number. So game number 2, we are now on the draw since we won game 1. Our 7, it flashed there for a second, was pretty bad. It was like, I think 3 land, a prism, and 3 blue cards. Spell Pierce is in the deck because if we wanted to counter a Collected Company, I thought it could be sort of okay. Pact of Negation is pretty bad, and I'm a little bit not a huge fan of bringing in Thoughtseize against Ragavan decks. So we went with Spell Pierce. We could also perhaps Spell Pierce maybe like a Grist, or if they had like maybe a Liliana, or even a discard spell, honestly. Sand is kind of medium, but I think ultimately it's okay. We do have this Inverter. We also have an Angel's Grace. So we have some pieces, we have mana, we have a little bit of interaction that might be relevant. So we'll keep this bottom 1 of the lands. Or no, we bottom the Spell Pierce? Yeah, okay, bottom Spell Pierce is fair. So they lead on turn 1 Ragavan. We draw Wishclaw, which is fantastic. Just another combo piece. And then they play Croxa. And we have a bit of a dilemma here. I think what I end up doing is getting rid of this Angel's Grace, since Inverter Wishclaw can combo on its own. And I kind of do need this mana. I can't, if I ditch the Pentad, then I play Wishclaw. I think the argument is between Pentad and Grace. I think I end up just ditching the Grace. So again, let's think about this. If I ditch the Pentad, then I play the Wishclaw. Eventually this bloom is going to come off, and I bloom to play Inverter. I would have had to... Basically, I have no chance of Wishclawing and inverting in the same turn there. I could activate Wishclaw and Inverter in the same turn, but then the Oracle is going to be stuck in my hand. And if the Oracle's stuck in my hand and they have the Wishclaw, then they can Wishclaw for a discard spell, take it from us, and we're just dead. So since I can't reliably treat this Wishclaw as an Oracle if I don't have enough mana, I'm going to discard this Angel's Grace. I think. Oh no, I discarded Inverter? I played this a couple days ago, but discarding Inverter, do I like that still? I guess I figure, okay, so land, 4, 5, 6, 7, Wishclaw, Grace. Potentially this has Wishclaw for ad nauseam lines, but I actually don't like that as much. Oh, the problem with Inverter though is if I discard Grace, bloom, I'm not really clearing that library so fast. Removal's on. That's actually a pretty hard spot. Because I think Inverter, Grace have about equal likelihoods. I think Pentad should be kept over those two, but it's not super clear. Yeah, I don't hate discarding Inverter. I could go either way on Inverter or Grace there in hindsight, thinking about it a bit more. This version is playing for Grace Naus, needs a lot of mana in one turn. The other version is playing for Inverter Oracle, needs a lot of mana in one turn. The common theme there is needing a lot of mana, and so Pentad Prism stays. We draw a Grace though, which is kind of bad. And we play the Wishclaw just in case we get discarded again. I'd rather have the Wishclaw than the Pentad Prism. This does open it up to removal, but if we play the Pentad, we play the Wishclaw the turn after. We're not using the Wishclaw that turn, so the Wishclaw is kind of going to be exposed to removal anyway. Our opponent has Magus of the Moon, however, which is definitely bad for us. Draw Unlife, so we have a bunch of white combo pieces, and they have a second Magus of the Moon. We do have this Bloom coming off Suspend, which can be used to make black mana. Hang on, let me stop that. The Bloom can be used to make black mana. The thing is, we need black mana and white mana, so I had a couple choices there. I could have played the Pentad Prism on 1. Or sorry, no. The thing is, if I play the Pentad Prism on 1, then I can't play this Unlife without popping the Bloom, which means I'm just dead to their swing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I have to play this Unlife in that spot, and I can't afford to keep the Bloom in play. So the best thing I can do here is play the Unlife, play the Pentad with 2 counters using part of the Bloom mana, and now if I draw, what could I draw? Spoils doesn't do it. I think I actually might be dead. I think I needed to draw something other than Unlife or Grace in those couple turns, because Naus doesn't do it, because even though I could cast Naus, I can only go +1 mana. And I only have 2 colored mana, and I have none of my Grace or Spoils combo pieces. So Oracle doesn't work. Or not, sorry. Oracle Spoils combo pieces. So Oracle doesn't work because of mana. Spoils doesn't work because of mana. Grace doesn't work because, or Naus doesn't work because of mana. So this is all kind of bad. Magus of the Moon is going to get us. So we're hit to negative. They get an Oracle, whatever. And then they Croxa us again. We lose game number 2. So on the play for game 3, let's see if we can bring it back. Alright, game number 3 against Jund Company. We have a pretty decent hand. We have a bunch of mana. We have Grace, we have Naus, we have Inverter. Prism Naus points to a potential value Naus. We also just have the Grace Naus combo here along with 5 mana, so if we can get a little bit more mana, we could just win with that. This Inverter is nice in that if stuff gets discarded, we have that as an angle. We also have the potential to turn 3 an Inverter if we draw an Oracle, or to just with like Oracle land turn 4 Inverter Oracle. So we have a lot of good draws with this. It has a lot of flexibility in how we can spend these combo pieces. Perhaps the weak point of the hand is this Pentad Prism. We are kind of leaning on it pretty heavily. Let's see how things go. So our opponent leads with an Ignoble Hierarch. We draw a Spoils, which again is just more redundancy. I'm pretty okay with that. Now we have Thassa's Oracle just winning on the spot. Our opponent has turn 2 Lightning Skelemental, which is kind of scary. Let's see what it hits. It takes... Oh wait, I have a choice. So I discard Grace and add Naus. And what I'm looking at here is the possibility of like spoils for Thassa's Oracle, and then have Thassa's Oracle inverter lines. I'm not liking value add Naus as much since I've already been hit down to 12. I'm also looking at the fact that they're at 17 life. Maybe I can just play this inverter and clock them with it. So their Skelemental is gone. Now that I draw this Unlife, I have additional ability to like stall if they have like... Oh no, I spoils? Wait, what? Oh, okay. So I spoils... Yeah. For Oracle, and then I play Inverter. So this demands that they have another discard spell, otherwise I'm going to win with Oracle. And even if they can't kill the Oracle, or even if they do manage to get this Oracle out of my hand, I have the potential to just kill them with Inverter. So let's see what happens. So our opponent has a Collected Company into double Croxa, which is super obnoxious. So we have to discard our Unlife, and we have to discard our Oracle. We draw spoils, we hit them with Inverter. They play a Collected Company and find a Skelemental and an Ignoble Hierarch, so they can hit us down to 1. Discard our Spoils of the Vault, and now we're in the spot where we need to hit them twice more. We have 2 cards in our deck. The thing is, we can't afford to hold Inverter back as a blocker because we're just going to lose then. So we know there's a Grace and an Adnals in our graveyard. We need Grace to be the top card in our library, so we have a 50-50 here to win. Which, after all that they had Skelemental, double Croxa, second Skelemental. I think that's a pretty decent spot to be in, to still have a 50-50 against all of that. And we hit it. We top deck Grace. We attack with Inverter, and we need them to not have removal, but of course they're not going to have removal against the combo deck post board. Nor are they, I can't really think of any sort of flying creature that Jund Company would possibly play that would block Inverter. They attack, we Grace. They could have, the one other thing they could have, actually they punted here. They have 2 things that they could have here. First of all, they could have played this Croxa out of the graveyard and just killed us since it's life loss and not damage. The other thing that they have here is they could have Coco'd into like a Croxa or whatever. So they definitely misplayed. They could have won this game, but they didn't. And that's why you give your opponent every possible chance to make mistakes, because sometimes they just won't realize that they have you dead on board. And instead we win. So also kind of showcasing the power of Inverter as an attacker. This is common against grindy matchups, against Shadow, where you can just kind of clock them with it. Inverter is definitely worth a slot in the deck. The ability to... It opens up a lot of different tools. You can get it with Profane Tutor, and if you get it with Profane Tutor, then you have Inverter Oracle lines. So basically, if you think about it like this, if you have a Profane Tutor coming off Suspend, if you have a white card in your hand, that's why we play Ad Nauseam. If you have a blue card in hand, that's why we play Inverter. It's a 2-card combo if we have one of the cards. Now, it's not as good as Spoils Grace Oracle, but sometimes if your bottleneck is raw number of combo pieces, having the ability to combo with 2 cards is just inherently very valuable. And honestly, sometimes it's a 1-card combo against Shadow, where you just play it and attack them with it. So Inverter, I think, is definitely worth the 1-of slot. Okay, so we are 2-1 thanks to our opponent's misplay. Let's get on to match number 4. Alright, so we are here with round number 4 against Giovanni MF. Let's see what we open with. We have a hand that has 3 Profane Tutors, no Black Source, and 2 Pact of Negations, so we can't keep that. This hand is better. We can bottom the Jace. Our opponent is notably on a Lurrus deck. We are a little bit mana light, but given that Lurrus decks frequently play discard spells, I like having this redundancy of combo pieces with Unlife, Grace, Profane, Inverter, and we're just looking for a bit of mana. So we bottom the Jace. Our opponent leads on Blood Crypt Ragavan. Why do they always have the turn 1 Ragavan? I don't know. I draw another Unlife, which is not amazing. I would have preferred to draw some mana. They hit us with the Ragavan. One nice bonus of the style of Naus that I'm playing. Ragavan is Savannah Lion that makes Lotus Petals rather than Savannah Lion that draws cards. It's not possible for Ragavan to get any sort of meaningful card advantage against this style of Naus. We play a Pentad Prism, which is good, because we do need the mana, and we're looking to just play Inverter next turn, but they blow it up with Kolaghan's Command. So they've delayed us here, but that would have been a perfect setup. And so we draw City of Brass, and we can play out Phyrexian Unlife, which is maybe the next best thing if they were going to blow up our Pentad Prism. Our opponent continues to hit us with Ragavan and make Lotus Petals and exile irrelevant cards. They put Lurrus into their hand, and we draw a Profane Tutor that we suspended. Profane Tutor is very good because in 2 turns we will be able to attempt to win the game, and we're not under so much pressure that we do not have time for this Profane Tutor to go off. Our opponent plays Lurrus, loops Bauble, continues to hit us with Ragavan. We draw Wishclaw, which is not the worst, because if we draw an extra land, now we have protection for when we attempt to combo, because we can get a Spoils with Profane Tutor, and then we can get a, if we top deck a land, we can use Wishclaw to go get a Pact before we go for it. Notably, because this Gemstone Mine is only on 1 counter, even a fast land does work for us here. If this were a situation where our Gemstone Mine were on 2 counters, what we should do is we should tap this on our opponent's end step, waste one of the counters, and then turn on fast lands as untapped hits. Our opponent continues to loot Bauble, discards us, blows up the Wishclaw, but we have this Profane suspended, so as long as they don't have a counter spell, we are in good shape. They cling to dust, trying to just draw another card, but apparently they don't find one of their couple counterspells. Again, depends on the builds. Some Grixis Lurrus builds are playing more counters now, some are not playing as many. We get Spoils, we go for it, and they don't have a counter, so we win with Oracle. Notably, Shelldog, pretty useful there, keeping our Oracle protected from the onslaught of discard spells. I don't think we would have won this game without it. Alright, and we are on to game number 2. Alright, so game number 2, we're up a game, so this time we're on the draw against Giovanni MF. Our opening hand is not amazing, but it is keepable. We have lands, we have a Spoils, we have a couple Unlifes. We're looking to put an Unlife in play, hopefully not get the Spoils discarded, although I think it's likely that it will get discarded, and just rip some combo pieces off the top. So we lead on Swamp, since I'm not sure which direction I want to play these pathways in yet. We draw a Spoils, which is fantastic. And we play an Unlife, which eats a counterspell, which again I'm a-okay with. We've turned this Unlife into a discard spell. We have another Unlife, and we also have Spoils. So I tend to be pretty happy about opponents aggressively countering setup pieces, like 75% of the time. Usually it's good for us. Sometimes it's really bad for us and will lose us the game. But in situations like this, I'm very happy that Unlife ate a counterspell. They're continuing to represent counter magic. So here we have our Bloom coming off, which they counter and which we don't care about. We drew an inverter. And here we can play another Unlife, which this one resolves. They play explosives on 3. If we draw a land, doesn't... Yeah, land. Okay, so end step we spoils for Oracle, because now we can spoils Oracle, and since they're representing breaking this Unlife, but we have this Grace, we're in fine shape. There is some risk there. We did exile a bunch of cards with spoils, but we're spoilsing for a 4 of, so I think that's pretty acceptable risk, given that if we hit the Oracle, we are very likely to win on our turn. We could have waited, tried to draw a land, and if we drew a land, then we could spoils on the same turn and have Grace available if needed. But I think the chance to get this here is worth the risk of exiling 20 and then dying to them cracking the E. Because we're not that likely to draw a land, right? So we've got 16 lands in our deck at that point, and probably about upper 40s number of cards. So we are only about 1 in 3 to draw a land, and we're much better than 1 in 3 to have Oracle in our top 20. So we Oracle spoils. We name Simeon. They try to blow up explosives, but we have Grace in response. And we win the match. So we are 3-1 with Ad Nauseam. Let's see if we can get round number 5 and claw our way back to a 4-1. Alright, we're here with round number 5 against Ahaha. We win the die roll. We open with a decent hand, nothing amazing, but this is okay. We have turn 2 Profane, we have a Grace, we do have a Jace. We would like maybe a Pentad so that way we can Jace spoils Grace on turn 4, or we'd like an Oracle or Bloom on turn 1. An Unlife wouldn't be the worst. There are a lot of decent hits. Lead on Seachrome, since it's the fast land. Our opponent is playing Death and Taxes. If they go Plains Vile, we suspend Profane on 2. And our opponent has Thalia. We draw an Unlife, but we can't play it. Inverter notably is good against Thalia, since we don't really care what's going on with it. We pay the 1 for Profane to be played, and we grab a Shelldock. So the reason I'm grabbing Shelldock here is because I'm expecting to try to win with Inverter, so I would like to have an extra win con, especially an extra win con tucked safely under a Shelldock. Now sure, they could field it, but if they field it, then I mean I still have this Jace in hand. Maybe they'll use the field this turn. Maybe it's just bait for field and they aggressively feel like they have to field it. So let's, since I know I'm not going to be going for things this turn anyway, I'm okay with just playing a tap land this turn and putting the question to them on field. So I do hit Oracle. Our opponent cracks Silent Clearing and then vials in a Land and Arbiter. I have 2 mana up, so if they do try and field me, I'm in okay shape here. On our main phase, we have Pentad Prism, which is also pretty nice as far as mana goes, because we can play that into Thalia and it'll have 3 counters. I still have 2 mana up for Arbiter. Here, I'm pretty sure I misclicked and just didn't, like I clicked through the chance to pay for Arbiter. Remember that you need to click on Arbiter and then pay its cost in response to whatever your opponent is trying to do. It won't give you the chance to pay it at that time, which is kind of annoying, but that's how it is online. Alright. So a bit of a misclick, not great. We don't really care about that Shelldock too much though, because we have Jace. Right now we have 7 mana in play. They play Esper Sentinel, which we don't care that much about, and here we're just going to jam Inverter. We have 3 mana left over. and we're looking to just play Jace next turn. We have Pact in case something were to go poorly. We can Pact. Here I'm going to pay 1 for the Esper Sentinel. There's no reason to give them an extra card here. It's not like I can do anything with that mana, and we still have 1 mana left over to pay for Pact here. So Jace resolves, we mill ourselves, and we win. So we are 1-0 over Death and Taxes. Let's see if we can get game 2. Alright, so we're here in round number 5, up a game against Death and Taxes. This opening hand is risky. It's definitely risky. We only have 1 land. If we do hit our second land, we can play Prism, we can play Wishclaw. We have Inverter in hand naturally, which is very good against Taxes because it's a creature. We have a Spoils, we have a Wishclaw, we have a Jace. So I do like this hand, although this does have significant amount of risk. I like it probably only on the draw, where we get 2 draw steps to hit our second land. But with that in mind, I am going to risk this. Our opponent leads Plains Vial. Notably, they are not playing a Yorion variant of Taxes, which means they're more likely to have Vial. We suspend Bloom, and we don't get our land with our first of 2 draws. Our opponent plays Thalia. We do hit a land, which is good, but we can't play our Wishclaw or Pentad because they have Thalia. Our opponent clocks in with Thalia. End step, I'm going to Spoils for a land here. This is a bit risky, but I need to hit these lands if I want to come out from under this Thalia. So I'm just going to name a 4 of and hope that it works. We're going to name Gemstone Mines so that we can play one of these 2 drops next turn. And we hit it, although it takes us fairly low. So we draw a Path to Exile, which is interesting. First, I'm going to play the Pentad, and if I need to use Path to Exile, I will. Otherwise, I won't. Our opponent Ghost Quarters us, thinking that maybe since did we exile our swamp? We did exile our swamp, so they're figuring maybe we don't have another basic, but we do. And now we only even have to burn 1 of the Pentad counters if we need to use Path. Opponent has Field of Ruin. They crack Silent Clearing, and so on their second main? Why am I doing this second main? Oh, I'm doing this in response to Vial in case they have like Sanctum Prelate or something. So we exile Thalia, and they Vial in Sanctum Prelate and choose 0. Which is a little bit annoying in that it's going to turn off our suspended Lotus Bloom. We do have a decent amount of mana still, though. We draw City of Brass and we play Inverter of Truth. I make a mistake here because I use 1 of the Pentad Prism counters rather than go to 1, but I should have gone to 1 because since I use the Pentad Prism counters, now we're actually dead to field killing one of our blue sources if we don't top deck Prism out of our deck. There's no real difference between 2 and 1, so I should have just taken the pain and went to 1. Although, actually, no, that's not true. If I take the pain now and go to 1, if they field Gemstone, then I still can't play Jace because I don't have the requisite number of... Like, I can't use the City of Brass. Well, then I guess my line was probably correct, because so we keep City of Brass up. If they field us, then we can play. We can eventually draw. There is a Pentad in our grave, isn't there, or no? I forget what's in our grave. Hang on, we'll see. No, how's the Pentad in our grave? There's no Pentad in our grave. What is it? Spoils. Spoils a land. Oh, there's Seachrome Coast in our grave. Yeah, so with Seachrome Coast in our grave, even if they exile us, we can just wait till we have the blue mana. That was my thought process. Versus taking the pain here, and then if they kill Gemstone. I mean, I'm kind of in the same boat. I'm just waiting until I have the blue mana. This way is maybe a little bit less susceptible to artifact destruction on Prism, because if they kill Prism, I can still hit 3 blue mana. If they don't field, if they like only kill Prism this turn. So this is a little bit better. Our opponent fields our Gemstone. We draw Seachrome. We play Unlife, because why not? They have Silent Clearing, they have Thalia, but we have 5 mana. And we resolve Jace. And then we win. So we got there with the 4 and 1. Alright, so just a little recap with the list here. Spell Pierce and Sphinx kind of underwhelming. Thoughtseize honestly also a little bit underwhelming. And Leyline kind of underwhelming. So the cards and honestly Silence is good. It didn't really come up in this league, but Silence is good. So really I kind of want to do a pretty big restructuring on the sideboard. I'm not exactly sure what I want yet, but I'm gonna have to think about how we deliberately attack sort of like the biggest players and change some things around, because I don't think I think a lot of these cards that were good a few weeks ago or maybe a month ago aren't really too good anymore. Yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at on the sideboard. The main deck feels pretty good to me still. There is the option to shave a Jace. You could play a 21st land. You could shave a Bloom. I am kind of thinking about trying some sort of talisman build again. But I don't think that's where we want to be, because we don't really have the 1-drops to be playing with the talisman mana. So what I'm maybe going to try next is a version that has some cantrips, probably not Serum, because Serum's worse than Slight at the moment with all the Ragavan running around and with Profane Tutor. So maybe Slights, but also a healthy number of Claws. We'll see how that goes. Like I said, I haven't really played a cantrip list of this in a year and a half, since whenever I first started playing the Esper Inverter Shells. But in any case, 1 Adnals is good. Singleton Inverter is very good. Deck still can win, even though I think it's maybe not that great of a spot for us right now, with the lack of like burn and just pure aggro decks. Prowess isn't that big, it's more tempo. Tempo is playing counter spells. Tempo is a whole lot scarier for us than Prowess. But when we played against a fairly scary selection of decks, we played against Living End, 2 Grixis Lurrus, Death and Taxes, and what was the other one? Oh, John Company, which isn't the most real deck, but still, I mean, definitely can be scary with the Skelementals, given that we're a combo deck. So that is where we are at. If you like the Adnals stuff, you know, I'll definitely keep that coming. Next time is probably going to be a Doomsday video. And another thing I want to float the idea of is I do have a bunch of tickets that I won here from playing Doomsday. If there is a specific combo deck that you want to see, I might be able to branch out into some other options. I was thinking about playing some Lyris Lotus Breach. The thing is, I don't have baubles online, and it's a little bit of feels bad to be picking up baubles online, even though I could. So that was one thought. There might be some other combo decks. The Glimpse deck, I don't know if it appeals to me a ton, but it might be okay. Anyway, if you have some combo deck that you are interested in, shout it out. Let me know. I might be willing to do a video on it. I'll have to take a look and see. All right. Well, until next time, keep on casting Thassa's Oracle.